Is everybody ready? Ready? Great. Thank you all for being here. This is the DAO's Monday press conference, and as we do every other Monday, we're going to talk about two main things. The first is gun crime during the prior week, and the second, this week, will be a special topic. That topic has to do with carjackings and gunpoint robberies, as we have seen in the past week and also throughout the year, significant problems in this regard. In a moment, I'm going to introduce a lot of the people who are here today to make sure you're aware of them and some of the excellent work that they do in the community. But I do want to start out talking about something that I think is really important, and that is that at the press conference last Monday, I failed in two ways. The first way that I failed is that in talking about gun violence, talking about statistics, and speaking very specifically about the nature of the gun violence problem we face, the first way I failed is I did not acknowledge the pain and the hurt that people feel in the city of Philadelphia. I was talking to the people. I am here to talk to the people today. And the reality is that if you have lost someone in your family, or on your block, or in your community, or if you have a child who would like to play on the porch, or go to the subway, or play in the street, and you are aware of the terrible crisis of gun violence that we have in the city of Philadelphia, which is what I said. I did specifically say that we have a terrible crisis in gun violence in the city of Philadelphia. If you are aware of that, and if you are feeling that, then it's hard. And my words unintentionally hurt people. It was never what I wanted to do. It's not the work that we do every day. It's not the work we will do the rest of today. But I know that those words were the wrong ones. I chose them. They came out of my mouth. This is on me. I accept responsibility for that. I own that, because I failed in not acknowledging that pain and that suffering, a pain that disproportionately affects people of color and poor people. So for that, I am truly sorry. Now, the other thing I did was I talked about facts. And I talked about them with some poor choices of words. I misspoke. But there are two things we have to do if we're actually going to solve a problem of gun violence, if we're actually going to heal those who are affected by it. One of them, which I failed to do, is we're going to have to address that pain. We're going to have to heal, which my words failed to do last week. But the other thing we are going to have to do is we are going to have to talk about facts. We are going to have to be specific. I said then, and I will say again, we have a truly terrible crisis of gun violence. And what we have to do is be specific about its characteristics, know that data, and understand it. You would not go to a doctor asking the doctor simply to tell you whether or not you were ill. You go to a doctor saying what exactly is wrong and how can we treat it. And if you are lucky, you have a doctor who pays attention to the facts and talks about those facts, which I didn't do very well, but I did try to do. And if you are lucky, you have a doctor who has a good bedside manner. which I failed to do. So, having said that, I want to acknowledge people who are here today who do such an amazing job in the DA's office and outside of the DA's office to address issues of gun violence in their own ways. They are not here to defend me. They are here to talk about the work that goes on in their lives and the work that goes on in collaboration with the DA's office every day, not only to try to prevent the next victimization, but also to heal when that victimization has occurred. They include Councilmember Jamie Gauthier of the 3rd Councilmanic District, who has a hard out at 12, so we will make sure that Councilmember Gauthier is able to make her comments. Paula Peebles, who is the chairperson of the National Action Network, a well-known Philadelphia activist, and also a very well-known personality on the radio, who I understand is about to have an op-ed in the Inquirer a little bit later today. We have Movita Johnson Harrell, who is the founder of the Charles Foundation, who has suffered terrible losses in her own life from gun violence and in her own family, but who had the wisdom to bring CARES, the program in the Philadelphia DA's office that provides special services to the families of homicide victims during the 45 most crucial days right after a homicide occurs. She not only brought it there, she got the money to bring it there and became the head of our victim services for an extended period of time, even after her departure. That program has been so important and so effective, it has been renewed and refunded. We have Robert Listenby, First Assistant District Attorney, Chesley Lightsey, who is the chief of the DAO's Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit, where she works every day to hold people accountable on cases where there is an arrest. Deb Watson-Stokes, chief of the DAO's Municipal Court Unit, also an extremely experienced homicide prosecutor during her career, who works every day on matters that are close to and affected by gun violence. We would have liked to have the Reverend Myra Maxwell here, with whom I spoke at length just yesterday. She's on vacation, something that she deserves and needs out of town, but she is in charge of our CARES program, which stands for the Crisis Assisted Response and Engagement for Survivors program. We also have with us the Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler, senior pastor at the Mother Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia, a truly storied, historically important church with an important story to tell in the history of Philadelphia, who is one of the most important voices in this city on issues having to do with crime, having to do with race, having to do with justice. We have the Reverend Dr. Clarence Wright, who is the senior pastor of Love Zion Baptist Church and has been so kind as to allow us to use this facility on multiple occasions. And we have with us also the Reverend Jeanette Davis from DIVA Ministries, who has been a strong advocate within her community around issues of equity, justice, criminal justice, and also gun violence. Let me turn first, and of course we will take questions at the end. Let me turn first to data that we have for the previous week. So, unfortunately, for reasons that are technological, one of the last 7 days' data is not available. We received this data through the Philadelphia Police Department, but I can report on 6 of the last 7 days. We are talking about during the period 12/3/21 through 12/9/21. As you know, we always report the weekend the following week. Homicides to date, we are at 528. This date last year, we were at 570. That is an increase of 12%. In terms of the fatalities and non-fatal shootings recorded during the time period I mentioned, 8 homicides and 27 non-fatal shootings. The 8 homicides are obviously a terrible number, and more to the point, it's not just a number. These are human beings. Unfortunately, that number is close to the average we have seen during the pandemic period, which is almost exactly 1.5 homicides per day. This being 6 days, 8 homicides is pretty close to the 9 that you might expect. in terms of total incidents, the incidents in which there were guns or gun violence involved, there were 255 gun or gun violence incidents during that period, leading to 54 arrests made by law enforcement, which is a rate of about 20%. 53 cases were opened by the DA's office out of the 54 arrests that were made by the Philadelphia Police Department. And I will not go at length into what happened with bail, other than to say, once again, cash bail has failed us. There are some people who really need to be held before trial. And the system that we have for violent offenses with guns resulted in bails being set at an average of $237,500. As you may know, 10% will get you out on any one of those cases, and if you go to a bail bonds person, you're looking at 3.3%. So it just doesn't take all that much money. Even if you've been arrested for being involved in a violent gun offense, it just doesn't take all that much money for a lot of people to get out of custody pre-trial at a time when we are in the midst of a terrible gun violence crisis, as I stated earlier today and as I stated a week ago. At this point, I want to go over a few of the gun violence incidents. There is a little bit of good news coming at the end about an arrest, but I will give you that after I go through the more recent shootings. That arrest relates to an August incident. Right now, I want to talk about the incidents occurring this week. Last week on Thursday, the 9th of December at about 7 p.m., on the 2200 block of South 10th Street in the 3rd Police District, an Asian male, approximately 29 years old, was shot once in the left arm and once in the left side of his chest. He walked into Methodist Hospital and was placed in stable condition. No arrest has been made, no weapon recovered. Anyone with information, please contact PPD's South Detectives Division, 215-686-3014. Later the same evening, on Thursday, December 9th at 9:45 p.m., on the 1500 block of Spring Garden Street inside Bold Pizza in the 9th Police District, there was a robbery shooting involving an approximately 33-year-old black male who was shot once in the left eye. That male was transported to Jefferson Hospital, where he was placed in stable condition. However, the victim was also arrested for robbery in relation to the incident in which he was shot. Anyone with additional information, please contact the Philadelphia Police Department Central Detective Division, 215-686-3094. On the evening of Friday, December 10th at about 5:50 p.m., inside the 3rd floor apartment on the 3100 block of North Broad in the 39th Police District, an approximately 39-year-old black male was shot once in the head. Victim was pronounced at the scene by medics. An arrest of an approximately 35-year-old female has been made by the Philadelphia Police Department, and a weapon has been recovered. Anyone who has more information on this incident, please contact PPD's Northwest Detectives at 215-686-3354. I referenced that there was some positive news relating to a shooting. I'd like to go over that with you because it relates to a recent arrest in connection with a shooting that occurred in August. I'm delighted to announce the arrest and charging of an individual alleged to be responsible for a shooting over the summer in which several dozen bullets were fired in a residential area, leaving 3 people wounded and cars and other private property damaged. Following an investigation by Philadelphia Police, who did a great job with this case, with the assistance from Chester City Police, Shaquan Francis of Chester, Pennsylvania, was arrested and charged on Sunday for his role in the non-fatal shooting of 3 people, all of whom are residents of Chester. The shooting occurred on the 400 block of South 13th on the evening of August 8th, 2021. The DA's office has charged Francis with 3 counts each, because there were 3 victims, of aggravated assault as a first-degree felony, simple assault, reckless endangerment of another person, as well as a count of possession of an instrument of crime. The DA's office requested $1 less than $1 million bail for each of the 3 transcripts to help ensure Francis would be held in custody. $750,000 bail was required on all 3 transcripts, which is a lot better than we usually do, honestly. That is not terrible. And it may have the significant effect of allowing this person to remain in custody for the safety of everyone until having his day in court. I would like to switch now, talk a little bit about what's going on with gunpoint robberies, what's going on with carjackings in the city of Philadelphia. And I would note that with reference to any of the shootings I've just discussed, ADA Chesley Lightsey, Chief of the DAO's Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting Unit, is available to answer any questions about those specific cases. We have some tips, and I want to thank Captain Robert McKeever of the 19th Police District for providing these tips on how people may be able to avoid what could be a carjacking or what could be a robbery, as we have seen a number of disturbing incidents recently, and robberies are up significantly this year as compared to last year when they were down. Those tips are the following, and I hope everybody will bear them in mind as you are out and you are about in this holiday season in the 6th largest city in the United States, one of America's great cities. I hope you will bear in mind these bits of advice from our Philadelphia Police Department. Captioned, tips to prevent carjackings. Number 1, park in well-lit areas. 2, always be hyper aware of your surroundings. 3, equip your car with an anti-theft device. 4, lock your doors while you are driving or parked. 5, avoid driving alone at night when convenient. 6, don't stop for apparently stranded strangers along the road. Note their location. Pull over in a safe place once you have passed by in order to call for help. For anyone who does suffer an attack, if you are threatened with a weapon, give up your car. Your life is worth more than that. Try to note as many physical characteristics of the carjacker as possible so you can provide a detailed report when you call the police. But as always, avoid a potentially dangerous situation because that is the best way to prevent an attack. Always carry a cell phone with you when you exit your vehicle. Use your best judgment when driving and parking in unfamiliar areas. Anyone in the media who is curious about this advice, which seems to me to be excellent advice, should feel free to contact the 19th District at 215-686-3190. And thank you again to Captain McKeever. All right. For anybody who has the idea that robbery is an option, I want you to understand that we have some jail cells for you. And if we get you, we're going to be doing everything we can because this is extremely serious, violent crime, with or without a gun. With a gun, it is extremely serious, violent crime, and we are going to make sure that you are put in a place where you will not be a danger to others or a danger to yourself, as one of these robbers learned when he went to Bold Pizza. We are going to make sure that your violence is matched with an appropriate and just level of accountability, and we're going to do it the right way. We're going to do it on the evidence. We're going to do it on quality investigations, and we are going to have to do it because you did the wrong thing. So don't, simply put. I do at this time want to make sure that I give all of these wonderful people who are here today the opportunity to comment. So many of them work around the clock. They give up so much of their time, either within their work life or in their private life, most of them both, to provide support to victims, to support communities, and to try to go after the root causes of gun violence and ways to improve enforcement around gun violence. In many ways, these people are my heroes and my sheroes for the work that they do, and I mean that quite seriously. These are amazing people. They do amazing work in the community, and they can speak to many of these issues far better than I can. And that's not just last week, that's just reality. Some of these folks are amazing communicators and can bring along messages and highlight the incredibly important work that can be done when government collaborates with community, when government collaborates with faith leaders, when government tries new and modern approaches, and when government makes a decision not to repeat mistaken approaches that have never served us well and never will serve us well. I will call them forward in this order. I'm not going to keep jumping up to interrupt. I just want to give them an opportunity to say what they have to say, and then we will go to questions, and they will be in this order. First, Jamie Gautier, council member for the 3rd Councilmanic District. Second, Movita Johnson-Harrell, founder of the Charles Foundation. Third, the Reverend Jeanette Davis, here on behalf of the Black clergy of Philadelphia and vicinity, but here on our own behalf as well. The next, Paula Peebles. And then we will go to the closer, the Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler of Mother Bethel AME Church, and we will go to questions. At this time, I would respectfully ask one of my sheroes, who just had a birthday. Happy birthday, council member. And strangely enough, G. Lamar Stewart must have been born the same day, no, one day after, because his birthday is today. Council member, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Council Member Jamie Gautier. I represent Philadelphia's 3rd District, which is much of West and Southwest Philadelphia. I was pretty clear with District Attorney Krasner privately, and I was also clear in public comments that I thought his remarks last week were insensitive. I think it is obvious to everyone in this room, to everyone watching at home, and most importantly to people in neighborhoods devastated by gun violence, that we're in the midst of a crisis. I've had the opportunity to talk to District Attorney Krasner over the past several days. He expressed his remorse to me for those words, as he expressed his remorse for those words here today, and I believe in his sincerity. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't. I have advocated for the better part of my time in council for the mayor to declare a citywide emergency around the issue of gun violence, because that's how seriously I take it. And I do believe, though, that the district attorney is sincere in his remarks today. But more than that, I think that the true mark of a person is not just what they say, but what they do. And I believe in our district attorney's actions. As my community has suffered greatly over the past 2 years due to a dramatic spike in gun violence, he's been right there with us, helping people to get justice. His team is always out in our community. They bring a level of compassion that I've never seen before from a district attorney's office. One of the things that I most admire about DA Krasner is that even as our city's chief prosecutor, he understands that the spike in violence and gun violence that we're seeing is not just about enforcement. He understands that the areas where we've seen violence have been disinvested for a very long time. The people who are involved in violence have been disinvested in for a very long time. He's been one of the most vocal proponents for prevention, which is what this city really needs to take more seriously, along with what we're doing in the area of enforcement. He was one of the first public officials outside of my council colleagues to stand with me to demand that a citywide emergency be declared around the issue of gun violence. And I think, the comments that came out last week came out through a set of weekly press conferences that he's offered to be transparent on the issue, which I also think is commendable and is not being done in every area of our government that touches this issue. And so words matter, words can be harmful, but actions matter more. And I thought it was very important to be here and to stand in support with a critical partner of mine in this work. And I also think that it's time to move forward. We have an urgent task at hand that's keeping Philadelphians safe, that's making sure that they can thrive in their neighborhoods, and we all need to work together urgently towards that issue. And I'm going to continue doing that with DA Krasner and every other partner involved in this issue. So thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Movita Johnson Harrell. I am the founder of the Charles Foundation. Charles is an acronym for Creating Healthy Alternatives, Results in Less Emotional Suffering. Many of you know that I am a 5-time co-victim of homicide. I lost my father, my only brother, and a cousin to gun violence. On January 13, 2011, my 18-year-old son, Charles Johnson, was murdered in a case of mistaken identity. And more recently, this past March 5th, my 30-year-old son, Dante Johnson, went to California for a weekend trip. And there was a random drive-by where 4 people were shot, and my son, my 30-year-old son, was the only fatality, and he was murdered in California. We created the Charles Foundation 10 years ago to address the social determinants that lead to gun violence. And it was through the support of DA Krasner. The CARES model happened very organically when we created the Charles Foundation. Immediately, because my family's so popular, we began to receive calls. When people were shot, when people were murdered, we showed up to crime scenes, we supported families, and I created the CARES model. CARES is an acronym for Crisis Assistance, Response, and Engagement for Survivors, and its intentions are to engage survivors for the first 45 days of the occurrence of the homicide to help them through the most traumatic situation that has ever happened in their life, and then to do a soft handover to another victim services organization. DA Krasner and I met in 2017. He was very interested in ending gun violence and addressing the harms that were being caused in Black and brown communities. He invited me to come into the district attorney's office, and it is because of him that the CARES model came into the district attorney's office. I was able to secure $1.6 million to initiate this program that actually hired 15 co-victims of homicide. We trained 15 co-victims of homicide. So through that work, DA Krasner was also the one person who initially supported me in bringing GVI back to Philadelphia, where I was able to bring back $1.3 million from Harrisburg for that strategy, which recently just kicked off in Philadelphia. So DA Krasner has apologized to victims privately and publicly, and he understands that he made a mistake, but we need not forget the facts that DA Krasner has been on the front line standing with victims, standing with Black and brown victims to ensure that we are doing what's necessary to, 1, support people through one of the most difficult situations in their life, and 2, to try and make sure that it does not happen to the next family. Also, he supported us as I worked with Council Member Gautier and the End Gun Violence Coalition as we fought for $100 million for the city of Philadelphia for gun violence prevention, and also as we worked with Representative Donna Bullock, and we were very successful in bringing $24 million from the state level to Philadelphia for gun violence prevention. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Jeanette Davis, and I represent Divas Ministry Group nonprofit organization. I'm also a committee member on the Black Clergy of Philadelphia and Vicinity. I'm here today. Let me put this disclaimer out. This is not me protecting D.A. Krasner. I don't feel as though he needs protection. This is me speaking truth. D.A. Krasner misspoke in his wording. And as a woman of faith, as a faith leader in the community, I'm told that God gives everybody second chances. We all have grace. So the work, it's the action of a man or a woman that we should really take a look at. It's his actions. What is his record? What has he done? He advocates for gun violence prevention. He supports community-based organizations so that we're able to continue to do the work that we do in the community. When we talk about the people in the community, the hopeless, we're able to go in and we're able to provide hope, resources, and advocate on behalf of those who are voiceless. D.A. Krasner allows us to be able to do that. D.A. Krasner will be the first person to tell you that Reverend Jeanette Davis will come forward and talk to you if it's something I feel as though that's out of order, and we can find a way to make a resolution for that. But I won't stand back and be silent. I know DA Krasner as the man. If you make a mistake, you are given grace. You are allowed to be able to rectify that mistake. He's here today. That takes a man of integrity to be able to rectify your mistakes. So I'm here today to speak to you on behalf of myself and the community that we recognize that people make mistakes all the time. But what are you going to do? If we continue to look on the mistake and not move forward, we have a crisis. We have a gun violence crisis in the city of Philadelphia. We don't have time to sit and ponder over some words that were misspoken. We have to begin to move forward. And I pray that after this press conference, we can do just that. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good morning. My name is Paula Peebles. I am the chair of Philadelphia National Action Network. Our national president is the Reverend Al Sharpton. And I'm here today, and I stand in solidarity with all my colleagues and partners who spoke before me. However, within our faith, there's a reference that says, let the work that I've done speak for me. And that's what I want to address today regarding DA Larry Krasner. For the past 4 years, our community, particularly the Black community, the activists, the professionals, the leaders within our city have had an opportunity and an access within our community that we've never experienced. We've never experienced with the previous DAs to be able to contact a DA's office and actually be able to gain information, be able to work within the programs as established. We've tried this over the past decades, whether it was Castile, Rendell, Lynn Abraham, or the disgraceful Seth Williams. We've tried to work with the DA's office in the past. The doors have always been shut. So we're looking forward to the next 4 years in working with DA Larry Krasner, and that's why we mounted the campaign that we did to ensure that he would be reelected. For the first time within our families, fathers, grandfathers, brothers, husbands are coming home that have been wrongfully convicted. They're coming home. That's part of the problems that we're having in our community, because we have the youngsters, the grandchildren, the sons and daughters of the wrongfully incarcerated out here without parental guidance, suffering from mental challenges as a result of that, as a result of their father, their brother, their husband being locked up for more than 30 years, only to finally get an opportunity to address a DA that says, listen here, man, I didn't do this. In August, I was part of a women's group to appeal again to the callous insensitivity of our mayor, Jim Kenney. He still is being stubborn and won't work with all my colleagues here today, all the young guys that we work with that's out on the street every day. He refused to work with us. We are in a state of urgency. He refused to acknowledge that there's a state of emergency in the city of Philadelphia. We believe that there are some examples from the past, particularly with the John Street administration, that should be implemented block by block within our community so we can begin to address the shootings in our community and the murders. I, too, am a victim. I lost my nephew, my beloved nephew, the only son of my sister, in July of 2019. He was murdered, leaving a wife with 3 young children. So we all stand here in pain, and we don't have time to be distracted. DA Larry Krasner has acknowledged that perhaps his words were as measured as they should have been. We accept that, and we're going to continue to pick up the tools that we have, the relationship that we have, the access that we finally have within the DA's office to end violence within our system. However, a part of that partnership has to be the second floor, the mayor's office, the police commissioner. And when we have, I would like to suggest to you, media, that when you have a president of the FOP say, we're going back to old policing, what does that mean? For us in the black community, in the brown community, it provides us nightmares of the red cars of the Rizzo administration. So we don't want to work with people like that. We don't want to work with people talking about going to old police tactics when there's national examples. And right over the bridge, there's an example from Camden, New Jersey, how we can work with the police department, with the DA's office, and with the mayor's office to be able to begin to make transformational change within our community. So we look forward to working with the DA's office over the next 4 years. And thank you very much.
Good morning. Reverend Mark Tyler, pastor of Mother Bethel AME Church here in the city of Philadelphia. And I want to thank Paula, you for those last comments. We're here today because we don't want to go backwards. That change is always difficult, and casting a new vision, in particular around public safety, is one that's hard for people to imagine. That it's easy to think that if we just simply go lock up all the black and brown boys in the city of Philadelphia, which past administrations have done, that somehow that will make us more safe, when in fact it makes us less safe. The reason so many cases are hard to make today is because of all of those bad experiences that no one wants to deal with law enforcement today, because of the broken trust. So we're here not so much for Larry Krasner, but because of what his vision is and how it coincides with our vision. Movita, listening to you tell your story and to hear about your most recent loss this year of your son in my home state of California, one can only imagine the unbearable loss that you and your family must have. And the fact that he was killed in California also reminds us that violence has no respect to zip code or to state lines, and that the violence that plagues Los Angeles and Oakland, the same violence in Philadelphia and in Camden, has at the root the same issue when it comes to black and brown people. This country is yet to deal with the historic inequity that has created this. For once, I would love to see the media on a Monday morning have the same questions for the Chamber of Commerce. It's not rocket science. If you're the poorest big city in America, you endure a pandemic that shuts down the airport, hotels, rental car agencies, a lot of the places that hourly workers in this city worked, and they were already underpaid to begin with. Is it a surprise that a year later, people are seeing a spike in carjackings, gunpoint robberies? This is not just an issue for the police or for the DA's office. They certainly have their role. But the people who control wages in this city need to be held accountable and need to answer why we can't have a $15, at least a $15 minimum wage, which by all accounts would still not give you a living wage, but at least to get us up from the bare bones that we have today. And so if we want to talk about real public safety, we need to talk about holding everybody accountable. What we witnessed today is the result of what has happened of years of disinvestment. And when you cut people out of the American dream, you have to live then with the nightmare. And so if we want this to be a different Philadelphia, we can't just have these conversations, but we have to have some real truth telling. So I'm here today, and I appreciate Larry Krasner apologizing because the words were hurtful, but we know that it's more than about what one says. It's ultimately about what one does. And we believe in the vision of the last 4 years of his administration, and we look forward to working with him in the next 4. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do want to thank again the Reverend Dr. Clarence Wright, who had the humility not to want the microphone, but was kind enough to let us use this facility for the purpose of this discussion. We will turn to questions now. But I want to share something with you that I recently heard, speaking of California, from Father Greg Boyle For those of you who don't know who that man is, he's a pretty amazing guy who has been drawn to working with gang members in Los Angeles for 35 years. And he took nothing but grief for the first 10 of those 35 years, much of it coming from people who had a traditional view of law enforcement, that if you work with people who are involved in gangs, that doesn't go towards safety, that's coddling. That goes towards harm. Well, we are 35 years in, and so is the verdict on that. And with all of the struggle and trouble that Los Angeles and basically every other big city in America continues to have with gun violence, what you need to know is that gang-related killings during the period of his work were cut in half once, and they were cut in half again. Does that mean that all the violence stopped? Sadly, no. On the day that I got to hear from him, he was going to the 253rd, I believe 253rd funeral for someone with whom he had worked. That's about 7 a year, over 35 years. That is obviously terrible, and those are human beings. They have names. They are not numbers. They're real people, right? But what did he do during those years that has made him a legend in Los Angeles? What did he do that helped to support work that took gang-related killings from here to half and then half of that? And the answer is long, nuanced, and interesting, but the short version is a lot. Homeboy Industries teaches job skills, it removes tattoos, and it goes to the heart of what he views as being so much of this. And the heart of that is young people who are hopeless, who see no future, who have nothing to live for. His organization has worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of gang members who walked in the doors, engaged with them over 18 months. I'll give you an example of just one of the things they do. It's not hard for you to see. Next time you go through LAX airport, look up, and you're going to see the Homeboy Bakery is ready to sell you a croissant in LAX as you go to enjoy everything that city has to offer. And it looks a lot better than Starbucks, I'll tell you. Take a look. They are such an institution at this point that they're selling their products in LAX for tourists who come there from all over the world to one of the biggest airports. They have made enormous change in people's lives because they recognize that at the core of this, for so many people who seek the comfort, which is what it feels like to many of them, of a gang, for so many of them, they're doing it because they don't have the comfort of full family support, and they never did. The way he has stated it, the words he has used, and his words are a lot better than mine, are people who've never been soothed, don't know how to soothe themselves. And people who are suffering from, once again, his words, disorganized attachment, who have not had the parental support one would hope for, are more likely to find family in that gang. And they go to the heart of it. That is only a part of how we have to deal with it. But it is an important part of how we have to deal with it. We cannot simply repeat the terrible, ongoing mistakes of the past, including their effect on parenting and everything that that means, not just in LA, but here as well. All right, anyway, I am grateful for the kind words of everyone here. Although I did specifically say, please don't defend me, but at any rate, I'm still grateful for the kind words of all of you and for your support and also for the work that you do every day. Are there any questions?
Mr. Krasner,
Yes, sir.
your press release had said you were going to talk about carjackings. I didn't hear you say, do you have numbers for us? Like, where does we stand with the number of carjackings this year compared to the same time last year? Thank you for the tips on
Mr. Dean, I do have some numbers relating to robberies, but we can try to get you more specific numbers after the press conference relating to carjackings itself. I think the number that we got telephonically and most recently is that there had been about 10 since September that were especially noteworthy, and about 5 of them over just the last week or so. But I understand that to be a number for gunpoint robberies, which include carjackings, but they're not exclusively carjackings. But we'll try to get you more information on that, Mr. Dean. Are there?
Clue as to whether they're up, down, staying about the same, where are we with these carjackings?
Well, if we are talking specifically about data, and once again, I want to be clear that when I talk about data, that doesn't mean I have forgotten that there are people involved and that there are people who have suffered terribly from these events. But if we're talking about data on the way it is kept by the Philadelphia Police Department, what it indicates, and you can check this by looking at the weekly reports and the annual reports, what it indicates in terms of armed robbery is that we had a decrease of about 15% last year and an increase of about 25% this year so far. In terms of armed robbery, in terms of carjacking, I'll see what we can do to get you more information after the conference.
Krasner, you had a number of high-profile robberies, armed robberies, specifically just this weekend, a groom whose watch was stolen, then you've had a number of video incidents capturing similar crimes. What's the message to those people, and is there a possibility that because these crimes are so similar, they are linked or, part of some gang or group out there targeting people right now, and they're high-profile items?
So let me say that there are investigations that are ongoing, some of them going quite well. From what I understand, I don't want to compromise any of them by saying whether or not we think that there is a connection. You are certainly correct that there has been an uptick over the last week, and indeed a lot of it has been high profile and very disturbing to the public. My message is very simple. We take those cases incredibly seriously, and as soon as police come forward and say we believe we know who did this, we will be poised to charge them with every appropriate charge and to prosecute it vigorously. Our position has always been that we should focus heavily on the most serious and the most violent crimes. I consider carjacking and armed robberies to be incredibly serious crimes.
Investigators are saying that the majority of the carjackings, especially this year, have been committed by juveniles, and they're repeat offenders in many cases. What would your response be to that?
My response would be I can neither confirm nor deny that. Obviously, a lot of these crimes have not been solved yet. As for some of the ones that have, there are limitations on what my office is allowed to say about juvenile matters under the Juvenile Act. However, if you'd like some more information on that point, we can try to see what we are permitted to reveal under the Juvenile Act.
Mr. Krasner, in speaking
Yes.
with some residents and folks that live and work in the communities impacted by some of the violence, specifically this weekend, some of the armed robberies, they noted over and over that they don't necessarily feel safe on their streets. How do you respond to people feeling that way?
Well, above all, I think we have to acknowledge that their feeling is legitimate. It's legitimate because they are experiencing in their communities or in their own lives a truly terrible event. We have to acknowledge that, and part of the job of the District Attorney's Office is to work with our partners to try to heal after this has happened. Obviously, a different part is to try to prevent it from happening at all. That has something to do with enforcement, that has something to do with prevention. But I think, first and foremost, I understand how they feel. I think it is very important that people exercise caution when they are out and about. I know this is a high priority for the police department. I know it's a high priority for the commissioner. It's a very, very high priority for us as well. And we'll do everything that we possibly can to make them safe.
A week ago, you said that it was safe for the people to come into the city of Philadelphia, dine and shop. Are you saying now that the streets aren't safe?
So let me be very clear about what it is that we are up against. In every major American city, including the 6th largest, one of the great cities in America, my favorite city, Philadelphia, we are up against a terrible spike in gun violence. We're up against a crisis in gun violence. As I said a week ago, and as I have said earlier today, and as I'm saying again, we are up against that terrible spike. But we have to talk to people's hearts and to their heads. We have to understand their hearts and speak from our hearts, but also speak from our heads. We have to be specific. We have to be accurate. We have to be truthful. We are seeing a real problem this year with gunpoint robberies, which is a form of gun violence. We are seeing a terrible spike in gun violence and a terrible crisis in gun violence. All of that is true. It is also true, within the full context, that is revealed by the police department's data. I'm not going to go over that again, but I think it's available to all of you. You're all great journalists, and it's real, which is that our problem, specifically and especially, is about gun violence. So to the extent that people make their own decision not to come into the city, that is one that obviously they can make, and I'm not going to second guess that. But it is my hope that people will, in all of our great American cities, feel like the holidays are not over and feel like they do have the ability to go out, to take care, and to enjoy everything that the cities have to offer.
Mr. Krasner, I asked a specific question. Are the streets of Philadelphia safe?
So I am here to talk, and I say this respectfully to you, right? I'm here to talk to the people of Philadelphia, and I'm doing that through journalists, and I'm also doing it through social media. That, to me, is the most important thing. I'm not here to tell people what they should or should not do. All that I can do is share with them what the facts are, what the reality is, and to acknowledge and validate the hurt and concern that they are feeling. And that is what I have done. Is there another question?
But a week ago, you said the streets were safe.
Is there another question?
Tomorrow, the mayor is holding a press conference to welcome folks back for leisure for work to downtown. Is that a good idea, given everything we've spoken about today?
I'm not here to second guess the mayor. I'm not. You know, the mayor is making his own decisions. I respect that. I respect his lane and whatever he does. I'm here to talk to people in Philadelphia.
Mr. Krasner, your relationship with the police department was not good before last week. And the fact that you rarely have police representation at your weekly press conferences, as is the case today. Do you think that, you know, how your words came out has further damaged your relationship with working with the police union, the police department itself? Do you think that there's, I mean, how would you assess, because of course your words were used in some national news telecasts to basically bash you. So how do you think that your words have impacted your relationship with the police department?
So, you know, I think I continue to enjoy a very good relationship with our police commissioner. It is our police commissioner who is in charge of the Philadelphia Police Department. There has not been a good relationship with the leadership of the FOP for a long time, and there are reasons for that. Like not calling what happened to George Floyd a murder. Like the leadership of the FOP not calling what happened on January the 6th insurrection, treason. Like the leadership of the FOP defending the visible wearing of Nazi tattoos by a police officer while in uniform. Like the leadership of the FOP referring in 2017 at a press conference to Black Lives Matter as a, quote, pack of rabid animals, unquote. There cannot be any compromise with union leadership that does not speak for its active members but acts as a megaphone for Donald Trump. That's just where that is. For those of you who are under the impression that the leadership of the police department is the leadership of that union, I assure you it is not. And I assure you that we continue to collaborate closely and enjoy a good relationship with the actual leadership of the Philadelphia Police Department. Are there any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, this one's about bail. Kind of two parts. One, you said that bail magistrates are not upholding your bails. Is that kind of what you mean? Like, is that the problem that you guys are seeing within the office? Can you kind of specify what exactly you're seeing?
Sure. So I do not want to attack or go at particular bail commissioners, but I think it's important the public understand that Philadelphia is the only one of the counties where initial bail, the first bail for a new criminal case, is set by people who are not elected. They are not actually judges, with very few exceptions. Some of them are not even lawyers. And to a large extent, they're looking at a little diagram that has no scientific basis with numbers on it, which basically just characterize the kind of bails that were set in the past. That's not a good system. What I have proposed, which is very similar to what the former public defender, Keir Bradford Gray, proposed, is that the bail commissioners do a really good job dealing with less serious offenses. Philadelphia should be rightly proud that if someone is arrested for a minor offense, they can get a bail hearing in 8 hours. or so approximately, so that you're not dealing with a case where, you know, a pet is going to starve to death, children may be left unattended, all kinds of other really bad things can happen. And I think that their role is valid for handling less serious offenses. But I have said before, and I will say again, I believe that when it comes to serious offenses, including all gun violence, probably anything involving a gun, those bail hearings should be done by elected judges, judges of the municipal court, where Deb Watson-Stokes, you know, she knows them very well. She's the supervisor of all our attorneys in those rooms. They should be done in a courthouse, and they should be done during business hours, so that we can have judges who are accountable to the public, who are on the record, because there's actually no record for bail hearings that are done by bail commissioners. There's no tape recording, there's no court stenographer. They should be on the record, so they're accountable to voters, so there is a record of what they do, and so you have the wisdom of judges who have not only been lawyers and heard a lot of trials, but they have supervised a lot of people on probation and parole for many years. It is my belief, without calling out individual bail commissioners, that if we were to take all the serious cases and have them handled in that fashion, yes, it would take a little more time, but I think that would actually be good all around. It would mean the defense attorneys can actually talk to their clients, which almost never happens, and it would mean that the prosecution can be fully prepared, having downloaded all the intelligence and all the prior record information that are available, rather than being on, you know, a ticking clock to do a hearing at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning.
And just to be clear, you guys are also appealing those, like, on a regular basis, or you guys appealing whatever bails you don't think are appropriate?
We appeal it when we think it will do some good. You should know that there are frequently situations where we consider the bail to be outrageously low. We appeal it, and then it is reduced. And I know that doesn't sound logical because it's not logical. But what's actually happening there is your appeal is done by telephone from the bail hearing to an emergency judge who is a judge of the municipal court, and that judge may be getting a call at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, and frankly, many of them have a way of stopping you from making that call, which is not only to deny your appeal, but to reduce the bail. So you get the picture that you're not supposed to do it. We do appeal in other ways as well, where we think it is going to help. But the fact is that we do not get the response in many instances that we would like on a gun violence case when we do appeal to another judge. And sometimes we do. As I said, I just laid out for you a case from August where someone shot 3 people, 3 Chester residents, in the 400 block of South 13th Street. We went in for about $1 million bail each, and we got close to that. And I think that's great. You know, I think that's really commendable. We saw a bail commissioner, even though it wasn't exactly what we asked for, take those cases very seriously and come up with a serious amount of bail. But that's uncommon. That's rare. And that's why I'm suggesting this route. Is there one more question?
Do you expect child charges against the 14-year-old in the Bold Pizza shooting on Friday?
We are, you know, I am familiar with that case. I've reviewed the video myself. We are carefully considering what to do there in 2 respects. First of all, understand it's an investigation in progress, and so I am always reluctant to say we have a decision before we have the information, because I wouldn't be much of a prosecutor if I did that. But second, we are dealing with a juvenile, and we're dealing with a juvenile that everybody recognizes in some respect was acting in defense of a person who was being robbed within those premises. So we will have to look carefully at what we do, and we will also have to observe the Juvenile Act, which has restrictions on what it is we can say about a juvenile. As you may know, it's been in the reporting, this is a 14-year-old. And the purpose of the juvenile system is to rehabilitate. It is not to make a 14-year-old famous for the rest of his life if he has done something wrong. It is to rehabilitate and to enable that young person to enter society and to be safe within society. There may be a point when we have more to say on that, when the investigation is complete, and once we have that evaluated, we can figure out exactly what the Juvenile Act requires, because we can make some decisions around charging. When that occurs, we will be able to say more, although probably not as much as we would say in an adult case. All right, thank you very much.
Excuse me, someone has my phone.
Oh, I'm sorry, is that yours? I was afraid, I was a pinch it, is that what you said? I was afraid it was Councilmember Gautier's phone, but I'm glad to see it. No problem.